Okay, so we're live. Welcome to everyone that's joining us on social media. My name is Noelle, and I will be moderating today's Armed with Faith program with Father Gary Kyriacou. Feel free to share where you're joining from in the chat there, in the comments, and also feel free to share any of your questions or comments throughout the program. We're going to be talking about youth ministry and ways that we can better serve our youth in the church today. As always, just a few reminders to please be respectful and polite in the comments. But as I said, do feel free to let us know what your questions are, and we will be answering some of them later in the program. And if you're joining us on social media and you want to join us on Zoom, the link to get the Zoom access is there in the description. So my host today is Father Gary Kyriacou, who is running the youth and young adult ministries in San Francisco, and I will turn things over to him for the program.
Thank you, Noelle. It's great to be here with you. I really appreciate it. And I'm thrilled that we're able to get Christo Pappademos on with us today. So Christo's here. Christo is the pastoral assistant at the Annunciation Cathedral in San Francisco, California. And we're thrilled to have him here. Christo, tell us, what does a pastoral assistant do?
That is a great question, Father Gary. I'd say I've been a pastoral assistant now for 3 years at 2 different communities, and there still is no sure answer for what a pastoral assistant is or does. It's kind of the short answer is that he assists the pastor of a community in all his responsibilities, liturgically, administratively, and socially, attending all the functions. But there really is a wide gambit of things that a pastoral assistant is responsible for. One of those always being youth, of course, which is why we're here today. But yeah, it is an open-ended job description is the best way I can say.
So, Christo, can I ask you something? Can anybody be a pastoral assistant? Like, can anybody off the street look on like a job site and see that there's a pastoral assistant job and just go ahead and sign up and be a pastoral assistant?
You might think, right, that would be a natural assumption to make, but actually, it's very specific. There's a very specific requirement you must have to be a pastoral assistant, as far as I know, and that is a theological degree from Hellenic College, Holy Cross, or specifically the Holy Cross School of Theology. Through experience in maybe camping ministry or volunteering, you can be a youth director at a parish. I understand many parishes are hiring youth directors, and they don't always need a theological degree, but with a theological degree, it allows you to be more of a pastoral assistant. It allows you to do things like preach to a community, pretty much anything a clergyman can do except lead the services themselves.
So you went to Holy Cross. You graduated from there. When did you graduate?
I graduated in 2018. I did the 4-year.
You did 4 years. So you went somewhere else before that?
I did. Before that, I attended San Diego State University, majored in political science. And then actually, I took 2 years between college and the seminary when I realized I was probably going to be going to the seminary. And I worked as a high school football coach and a substitute teacher just to save up some money before the expenses of living in Boston while attending the seminary. Yeah,
that's really cool. Some of the parishioners here in Camarillo know that my two secret job desires were to be a barista at Starbucks or to be a high school soccer coach. So you got me out there working with the kids that way. So Christo, let me ask you something. You grew up in the Sacramento area in Elk Grove, California, yep. And your name Pappademos is familiar to a lot of people because they might know your dad and your mom, or your mom's from the Seattle area, right?
Portland, Pacific Northwest, from Portland. Yeah.
And your dad is from like St. Louis or something or somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Born in St. Louis, raised in like Moline, Illinois, over there in the Midwest.
Yeah. But he's been in Elk Grove, planted there for like 40 years now, right? Like forever. And you grew up there?
Before I was born there, and he was there a couple years before I was born. So 35, going on 35 years there, maybe after. Awesome. He was in Belmont here in the Bay Area before then. Yeah,
and that's really cool. So Father Constantine Constantinos Dino Pappademos is your dad. Yep. So you grew up pretty close to the church. Did you know as a kid you wanted to be a priest?
That's a good. I didn't actually. So as I was growing up, the only priest I knew was my dad at the church, and I just thought, okay, this is something dad does, but this isn't something for other people. It's just the job that dad does. But then I actually, not until I went away to college and started attending a new community, St. Spiridon down in San Diego, and I saw Father Andrew Skordalakis as a parish priest, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, other people can do this job too. There are priests other than Father Dino Pappademos. So that's kind of, I went to college with the intention of just getting a regular job. But over my 4 years there, I think I just kind of realized through going to church on my own and being on my own after being at my home parish for so long, I realized that my path was probably headed back towards the church as opposed to a job elsewhere.
So really cool. So you graduated from San Diego State. You were an Aztec. I don't know if they're still called the Aztecs, are they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Okay, good. Everybody's changing their names.
Yes.
So I don't know. So you were an Aztec. You graduated. You took 2 years off. You substitute taught. You coached football, and then you left for seminary. You did 4 years at the seminary. You graduated seminary. What year did you graduate?
2018.
2018. Where'd you go? Where was your first position?
It was at my home parish in Elk Grove, California.
Very cool. You got to go back. You got to go back home and serve with your dad and learn.
I did for 14 months. Yeah.
And then from there over at Annunciation in San Francisco, which is the cathedral, which was taken down on that famous earthquake, not famous, but notorious in 1989. I can tell you that I remember watching the World Series. You probably weren't born, but I was watching the World Series. Yeah. I remember watching the World Series and seeing the camera shake and know what was going on and finding out that the church was severely damaged. They've got a great, they're doing great with putting up the building and getting going there. But unfortunately, I've heard that Father Stephen Kyriacou, no relation to myself, although he wishes I were his son, is not well. He's been sick. He's been out for a few weeks. And that's the reason why I was up in San Francisco, substituting for him, doing services. You and I got to talking, but how is Father? You don't have to get into any details about Father's illness, but how is he doing? How's he coming along? And what's it like? What's life like for you in the seat without really the priest being around?
Thank you for asking. Yeah. So the good news is that Father Stephen is he's on the mend. He's improving, but he's still not quite himself. Anyone that knows Father Stephen knows that he's a very dynamic, charismatic, spiritual leader, and the community feeds off of his personality, just the way he is. You know him, Father Gary, and so he's doing much better, but he's not quite his old self yet. So he is still away, but fortunately, before he was away, he and I spent pretty much like all day, every day together for probably like the better part of 2 years, the 2 years that I've been working here. And while there's a lot of learning that goes on at the seminary, some of the most developmental years for recent graduates of the seminary are with a veteran proistomenos in a parish. And so luckily for me, even though Father is physically away now, he still directs me with phone calls and everything like that. I learned a lot from him in those 2 years. And so even though, no one's really prepared for, a bump in a workload like this, but I think I'm as well prepared as I could have been. And that's thanks to Father Stephen himself too. So awesome. Yeah.
Very cool. I was just doing the math in my head and realized that 14 months after graduating in 2018, 14 months takes you into like the end of the summer there in 2019. And then 2019, you come in the fall around, right? So you were getting your feet wet just as COVID hit and you transitioned, right?
Exactly. I think I was at the church for 6 months before COVID hit. So, and really, they say it takes a year to learn a community. And I was, getting the feel of things and, all the families, the dynamics after 6 months, and then everything screeching halt. And the most important aspect of that was I was finally getting like acclimated to the youth network in the church. And then COVID comes, everything screeching halt. And and so it was tough to press on and try to continue to learn the community, even though it had changed drastically. And we're still we're in the fallout, the aftermath of COVID here. And so while things are coming back, it's still, and I don't think any community is, still not that community it was before COVID hit. And so now I'm, while I was learning the community, not only relearning, but re-envisioning what the future of the cathedral looks like.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We were talking about how now is the time that we're trying to get people to come back into the pews, right? And still, there's all kinds of mandates that just fluctuate from place to place. I'm in Southern California, much different here than it is in Northern California. I've been to Phoenix, I've been to Seattle, much different in those places. And then there's no COVID in Florida, from what they tell me. Just joking, that's a joke. There is COVID in Florida. No emails, please. But I'm just saying that it's much different in a whole lot of places. How have you seen the effects of COVID on your ministry, on the work that you do? Like, how has it changed the work that you do?
It has changed it, and there are a lot of cons to it, but there are a few pros, and I'll get into it. When it comes to youth ministry specifically, it's interesting because people might assume that youth work is easy or natural, but it's neither of those things really. In other words, there is no ideal time or circumstance for youth ministry, I would say. And Father Gary, you probably know all about that. But we tend to think, oh, if there was no Greek dance program, oh, if there was no Goya basketball, I would have this, the kids would be on fire about the faith, and I have all the time to do. But the truth of the matter is, Greek dance and Goya basketball aside, it is always very difficult to have fruitful, productive youth ministry. And so COVID now is simply another ripple in the pool of difficulty when it comes to youth ministry. But with the coming of technology and Zoom, I'd never video conference, I don't think, before COVID. Of course, I don't think many of us really did. But now through this technology, which a lot of people still use as an excuse, it's not ideal, it's not the same, it doesn't have the same impact. Anyway, I've actually found that it's been pretty useful, and so I've, the core of effective youth ministry in parishes across the board is usually the same. People think of big Goya programs or again, Greek dance, basketball, athletics, Goya or volunteer-based things. And so those things, especially in San Francisco, are still kind of coming back in different ways. But through Zoom and the virtual format, at the cathedral, we've recently come up with a little session we like to call Parables and Pareia. Pareia being the Greek word for fellowship or friendship or community, just enjoying each other's company.
I like that. Parables and Pareia.
Yep.
So is that a youth thing?
Yeah, it is. It's for the younger kids in our community. It's the young middle school kids, and then a lot of them naturally have younger siblings in grade school. So it's kind of a mashup of grade school kids and middle school kids, because the older kids, it's interesting. Different age groups have different needs. It's not really one size fit all, but I was hearing the need from some parents of these middle school to grade school kids for just spiritual sessions. And so we put together this little program called Parables and Pareia, and that's been like our main jam at the cathedral lately.
That's awesome. I love the title. I love alliteration. So when you can find two words that go together like that, sounds awesome. Christo, I've got a million questions for you that I'm writing down here as you're talking and telling us stuff. I want you to tell us, since we're still on it, Parables and Pareia. Tell me what that looks like. Like, you send out an email with a link and people get on it, and as they get on, you're teaching a lesson. Are you having the kids talk? Tell us what it's like.
Great. I will. So the format for Parables and Pareia is just what it sounds like. It's part parable. There's always a parable of the session that I email out to the parents beforehand, and I send along a Google Meet, which is like Zoom for the Google platform, because that's what the cathedral uses. And I send that along with the Google Meet, as well as usually one type of icebreaker. And so it begins with just talking to the kids, catching up, hearing from them, because they're so excited to see their friends from church that they don't really get to see these days anymore. And so the first, 10, 15 minutes is just hearing from the kids, and then we'll do the icebreaker, super simple icebreakers. We sometimes we kind of overthink them, but like, so the last one we did was in November, and it was just, okay, what are 5 things you guys are thankful for as we prepare for Thanksgiving? And so the kids just went around the room and read their list. And then we jumped into our parable, which was on the healing of the 10 lepers, how only the one leper turned around to thank God for his healing. And so we talked about thankfulness. And so it's a very natural conversation, discussion-based session, which I try to set it up so that I'll like start talking, but then I try to get the kids to do most of the talking, just go around the room, which is something I learned at Ionian Village through their Orthodox live sessions. The name of the game at Ionian Village when I was there was very chill, like just chill, lighthearted youth work, bringing kids together to have fun in the setting of the church. And that's what I've tried to replicate with Parables and Parea. It's good for the facilitator because you don't have to prep a whole lot when you have a million things you're trying to keep track of at the church. So you can have just a basic topic and then just let the kids take it from there. And every session ends with there's one of our kids, he likes to play the guitar, and it's just kind of like a thing at the end of every session. He plays like a new song on his guitar for us. So it's everything from catching up. We do talk about, of course, the faith, the parables, what it means to us in our lives, but then it's just the kids having a good time together.
That's really cool. I really love that. Does he play his own songs, or is he playing cover tunes?
He plays cover tunes. He's done some AC/DC, but he plays both acoustic and electric. So it's really
cool. That's awesome. I mean, you should broadcast that, man. That'd be awesome.
We should
watch. Yeah. So listen. So you email it out. You do it just once a month. You said, right?
Yeah, it's once a month. Yeah.
Right. All right. So you got one coming up for December?
I do actually on Thursday.
Very cool. Awesome.
Yeah, it's our Christmas edition. So yeah.
Good. Awesome. Well, good luck. Best of luck with that. So that transitions me to my next question about youth ministry and social media, right?
Yeah.
So I worked. I'm not going to tell you. I need some help with Ionian Village because I'm on my own with social media right now, and I'm trying really hard, right? And I got Facebook covered. Like I can take care of Facebook. That's my jam, like you said, right? Yeah. But Instagram and Snapchat, and then the worst one that I just can't figure out is like I just don't know what it's for. Like Twitter. What is Twitter for? But we don't need to get into that right now. But how are you using social media to communicate with the youth?
So again, I'm with you. I'm with you, even though like there's a few social media platforms that I know and I know very well, but I will not get into the TikTok world. That's just like one bridge too far. I don't know. The kids at the church have showed it to me, and I still I'm 31 now, so maybe I'm slipping in the social media.
I have to tell you about TikTok. I have a teenage daughter. That's why I waved. She was going off to soccer practice.
Oh, cool.
But she shows me TikTok, right? And she downloaded it on my phone. And she's like, just watch it. I found a half hour went by like that. A half hour just went by. And I was like, I can't have that. I can't. Yeah. Time is too valuable to lose like that. Like I looked up and 30 minutes was gone. So yeah, stick to your guns on that TikTok thing.
But, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people are afraid of social media and using it because, the Generation Z is all over it, right? But how do you use it to communicate with the kids? How are you using it to benefit your message and to communicate?
That's a good question. So like we talked about a little bit earlier with different age ranges at the church and of the kids come different needs, come different ways of communicating with the kids. So the one I'm most active on is Instagram. And on that we have like our, that's like the kids from the church that would either follow me on that would be like our young college age kids or like late or in high school age kids. And that one, it's pretty much like, it's just like, it's interesting again, like where the young kids, it's mostly like parable based or faith based and just, checking in with them about stuff. The older kids, you find they really just want to talk to you about what's going on in their lives, like their interests. So like the high school or the young college age boys at the church, working out. They're like always into like working out, and that's their jam, which is awesome because I was too. Not as much these days, but I was too when I was their age. And so even if it's on social media is just like, if it's just a direct message, like a joke about like a workout reference, or like, some workout figure that we both know of. And if it's just like, oh, hey, dude, did you see this? Or like, just like, a message of encouragement, like, bravo, blah, 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 or whatever. Like, we just kind of like, I keep it, it's very brief, and it's very just like positive, like nice, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. So it's not, I really don't use social media to be like, hey guys, we're having, this is happening at the church, if you could help us out with this. It's really just for the interpersonal communications, and like, which I feel like builds the connection with the kids and their church. It's okay, I'm not a priest myself yet, but someone who works for the church that has similar interests as the kids, and they see that on social media. They see if it's either like the kids when they came back from Iron Village are all amped on Greece, and so I am a fan of Greece myself, and so if it's like a picture of a frappe, a Freddo cappuccino, whatever, like something that that both people are into, and it just helps form those bonds. And then when you see the kids at the church, it's easier than having a whole week go by without communication. There's been a message or something in between. And so that's what's good. It allows more connection between youth and their church that was possible in the generations previous, before social media.
Very cool. I was last to get on the horse and the bandwagon for Facebook for the longest time, and finally got on there. And then Instagram figured out how to link the two. So it makes it look like I'm good at Instagram, but it doesn't matter. You said some things that I was very interested in. And one of the things that we're talking about with a lot of other clergy and people that are working with youth is how to get our kids back into the church, right? Right now, I'm noticing that the churches are having a really hard time trying to figure out how to get our youth back into the pews. We've fallen out of practice with it. I'm watching people who on Sunday mornings, we did a great job when the pandemic started. I mean, literally, like across the archdiocese, I saw parishes turn on their broadcasting skills immediately and figured out how to live stream a liturgy immediately, right? And we all did a great job of that. But what we didn't do was we didn't think about how to turn it off and get people back into the pews. And I think that now, after almost 2 years, what's happened is people are kind of getting comfortable of waking up Sunday morning, turning on their social media, watching it on Facebook, watching it on YouTube, maybe even on Zoom, however people are doing it. And I met one woman who said that she was thrilled because now she, instead of just going to one liturgy and coming home, she can watch 5 liturgies, right? She can watch all these different places. And, I like this person's sermon that day, and this preaches after the gospel, so I can hear his sermon and then that sermon. And then we get into talking about the gimmicks that we use. And I use that word, and I know that it's going to upset a lot of people, but to me, we have gimmicks. And I got to think of a better word. Forgive me, I shouldn't use the word gimmick, but we use like Greek dance and basketball to get our kids to come, right? Like you said that. And when when there's not basketball and there's not Greek dance, we who have taken the seed and have, absorbed it and have fallen in love with the faith, know that it's not because of Goya basketball or Greek dance that I'm going to church. I'm going to church for my faith in Christ and my love for God and neighbor, right? And Greek dance and Goya basketball are an extension of that. On the flip side, what happens sometimes is we think that if we don't have those, then that the kids are going to come anyway, and we'll have more time to preach to them, right? And so it's like 6 of one, half dozen of the other, and there's arguments on both sides. I like to say that I'm a product of Goya basketball and Greek dance. I grew up at the cathedral here in Los Angeles. We were always at the church. We were there for Goya meetings. We were there for Goya basketball, and we were there for Greek dance practice at the church maybe 4 or 5 nights a week. Crazy, right? Wow, yeah. But at some point, the seed landed on me, like it landed on you, right? I didn't go to Helena College. I went and studied film, and then spent a couple of years, like you did, working in the industry before going off to the seminary after having that calling. So it's not like I wanted to be a priest from a young age either, right? And so it's something we can talk about later on as well. Sure. But I like to say that Greek dance and Goya basketball are great tools to bring kids into the church and to give them the opportunity to learn, right? But as you said, many parishes have shut those programs down because of the pandemic. And how are you seeing that effect taking place on your youth ministries, on the things that you're doing as a pastoral assistant and the life of the church?
Sure. So I'm trying to think because it's been a bumpy road in San Francisco specifically, as far as, guidelines and restrictions allowing us to have people back. So we were kind of, not only was it was hard for every church to welcome back people, but it was even a little more difficult here in San Francisco because the guidelines were so restrictive. So we were late in the game opening up for in-person worship. And then when we did, it was, you have to be registered, you have to, sign this waiver. There was a lot of caution tape to get back to worship. So we didn't see kids for the longest time. And it wasn't until about Holy Week, I would say, is when we actually saw like kids in church. And it was because Father Stephen had me reach out and tell the parents, like, hey, we need altar boys. Like, we're coming into Holy Week. We need your kids. It wasn't like, hey guys, come to church. It was like, no. Like, there's a role for you to serve in the church. There's a need for you. Your church needs you. Doesn't need your money right now, which is what we get a lot of stewardship. The church it's the only church's only form of income, nonprofit stewardship. We need your support, but we actually need your time and your active service at your church. And so it started so we got altar boys to come back, and that was the beginning of kids coming back. And then we had some Sunday school complications with COVID. And so a message to some younger people that maybe weren't Sunday school teachers before were, hey, we need you to teach Sunday school. And so those people started coming back. And then it ranges where, luckily, we have a lot of kids who are kids of involved parish council members or what have you. And so if there was one project we had, one of our parish council members oversaw the cleaning out of the church's basement, which,
oh wow,
and so we needed kids to help us with that. And so, kids came back to help clean out the basement for the church. So there is no one trick answer to solve this problem. And it's a question we've been asking since before COVID. How do we get kids in the church? How do we get kids in the pews? And I'm just seeing that letting them know that they're needed specifically by the church, and not just the same old oh, it'd be great to see you. That's always helpful too, but just letting them know that they have a role to play, that they matter at their church community. They're part of a community that needs them. And because one day they'll need their community, right? We all, and I think that's why you were in the industry, but you were probably missing that church community aspect in your life after growing up in it your whole life. I was in college and I was missing that from my life as well, which is why I started going to St. Spiridon. And so at some point, and it's maybe not till later in life, you'll find yourself needing something, whether or not we actually know it's our church community. But so for right now, it's good for the church to let those people know that they're needed by the church, and then just keeps them connected so that when they do need their church one day, they're already there.
I love that answer, because I wrote it down because I'm working really diligently as part of my role as the pastor of youth and young adult ministries. Working really diligently with parishes to help bring our kids into the church, even like you said, before COVID, before all that. But now, even with COVID, getting them there and trying to figure out how to do it. And, I remember even Holy Week, my last Holy Week in St. Demetrius here in Camarillo, just decorating the epitaph on Friday. Yeah. It was lonely, right? It was 3 or 4 ladies came and wearing masks and, face shields. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic, but it was lonely. And we usually have the kids there and the kids sticking stuff on and kids doing things, and just noticing all that and how it's just transitioned. And then even altar boys, I've noticed that at the parishes that I go to, Annunciation was much different than any other place I've went to. You guys had 6 altar boys in there, which is, I don't know if you've had more than that, but that was a great number to me, who's seen a lot of different parishes without young people in there. I can also tell you that I was thrilled after liturgy when I walked into the hall and saw a bunch of kids dancing. So they're coming back and they're doing things, which is great, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. But growing up, your dad being a priest, was it expected of you to go to church? Like, was that like Christo's the preacher's kid, the Christo's the priest kid, they call them PKs. You're going to be in church on Sunday morning or Saturday night. Oh, we know Christo's got to go. He's going to get up early tomorrow to go to church. Was that your life? Was that how it was?
It pretty much was actually. Yeah, it was pretty much there, every Sunday, unless we had like a family vacation, and not in a strict way or in a guilt-inducing way, but just in a way simply as that's what we do on Sundays, and that was that was just the vibe, shall we say, that's just what we did. And I remember, in high school, a couple of times I had a football camp, which went into Sunday. So this was a big deal to miss church on Sunday. And I think I can count the few number of times that I missed church on Sunday because of football camp. And so it was not in a guilt-inducing way, but it just simply that's what my whole family did. And so, up until the time you can drive, what else are you going to do if the parents are going? The kids, they have to go where the parents are going, right? Right. Yeah, it's pretty much just there. But
two things on that one. I didn't grow up as a priest kid. I'm a PK. My dad was a painter. He was an exterior, commercial painter. So I'm a PK in a different way. Yeah. But it was expected to go to church on Sunday mornings. Like you said, it wasn't guilt induced. It was just what we did. It was part of it was like brushing your teeth. It was like, it was like what we did. Like my mom would put our clothes on our bed and we knew what we were going to wear to church the next morning. And we got up and we went. Now my wife puts my clothes on my bed. I'm just joking. But what I wanted to ask you, I like that you said that's just what we do, right?
Yeah.
And then I always found it funny when kids would come to church and the altar boys would come late, or a kid would come late, and they would come in and they'd be, "I'm so sorry, Father Gary, that I'm late. I'm so sorry." And I say, it's not your fault. It's your parents' fault, right?
Yeah.
And so even now we need to get back to that. Like, how do we encourage our parents to get back to that? And I'm going to ask you that question through this.
Okay.
What is it about the church that you love so much that you want to dedicate your life to it? A young man like you love football. You obviously love, I know we've talked sports, but you love entertainment. You love all those things. What is it about the church that you are like that makes you want to serve the church? Like how did that happen? And I'm not going to let you say it because your dad's a priest, because I know plenty of priest kids who are not clergy, right? So what is it about the church? What is it about Christ? What is it about it that you said, this is what I want to do? Why?
I'll have to go back now to think. It's been a while since I've really thought about this. And the kind of crossroads I came to in my life was my senior year at San Diego State. I was going on all these interviews for jobs, right? A lot of them were to be on a campaign, because I was a poli-sci major, so to work on campaigns for different local politicians in San Diego, or sales jobs, because poli-sci is a pretty versatile degree. My sister was in sales, and so it was just kind of okay, maybe I'll try sales. And I remember, this is going to sound negative, but I was on a field visit or whatever you call, with the company's top salesman, and so he was taking me around, showing me his style and everything. And without being overly negative, he just portrayed some characteristics that are key for success in that world. And I realized that this was a world that I wanted nothing to do with. I was like, if I'm going to be successful in this world, then it's probably not the right world for me. And so I think what it came down to was that I didn't find satisfaction or validation in a sales type world. Not to slam the sales.
I'm gonna push pause right there for a second for you, because I know what you mean. You don't want to offend salespeople, right? Because not everybody lives like that. But the experience that you had was different. I worked in Hollywood.
Okay.
I worked with movie producers, right? And that's what I wanted to do since I was a kid. I was the little kid that learned how to edit film. You know, I was cutting film at an early age and then videotape, figuring out how to do that. And now they've got it easy. They got all these apps. But I was in the office of a movie producer and saw him with the benefits he was getting, right? And I was like, I got to make a decision if this is what I want to, how I want to live my life. And I remember thinking, I can't. And I think that you had the same experience, right? So exactly. Yeah, go on, finish.
Yeah. So, and then I realized what has been one constant thing in my life, right? Like, so at different phases, you grow up, like when I was little, I was in band, I was a trumpet player. Then you play football, you're a football player. You're a high school student. Then you go to college and you're a college student. And I realized, like, through all those things, the one thing that had always remained the same is that, okay, I'm an Orthodox Christian. I am a member of the church, of the body of Christ. And so for all these different career paths I could take, like sales, whatever they would be, I knew like a beginning level would be difficult. And there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through when you're in an entry level position. And I thought, what is going to be worth jumping through hoops for one day? Is it a career as a salesman? And then when I thought of that and added the church to that equation, I thought, okay, there's going to be a lot of challenges and difficulties in any career. What career would be worth enduring so many challenges? And when I considered, a life in service to God, there really was no comparison. I was like, okay, either I'm enduring all this to serve God himself, and everything else kind of paled into comparison. And so the way I chose to fulfill that realization was to go to the seminary, study to one day pursue the priesthood. And that's where we are now in this pastoral assistant phase of things. That was a good question, and it's tough to put it into. A lot of guys have like, crackerjack responses, but it's a tough one to put into words. It's a very organic, process. And so
I hear you. I was right there with you, man. I know the feeling. I know the aha moment you probably had, because I remember my aha moment in the movie I was working on. It was a movie with Weird Al Yankovic and Leslie Nielsen, right?
Oh, no way.
It was a great show that we were doing, and I was thrilled to be on it. And I was like, this is a great stepping stone and going on. I worked on Shrek for a couple of weeks.
Oh, no way.
As well, right? And so I got a good story about that. I'll tell you another time. But I remember thinking, this is going to take me down a path that I don't know if I want to live, right? And it's not like I fell back on the church or it was like my plan B. It was like always, I think that God always had it in me for my plan A, but he took me in a route to get to it, right? And so I think that God takes us in routes to get to it. If you were to, a young man in your altar, we were talking to, I won't say his name, I don't want to, embarrass him or anything, but said that he was thinking about it, that he, at a young age, he wants to be a priest and is going to go off and, talk about it. What are the conversations like with him? Like, what are some of the things you share with him about the life in the ministry? And I loved your answer at the very beginning, by the way. When I asked you, what does a pastoral assistant do? And you said, that's a great question because it's different every day.
Yeah.
No matter how many classes I took at the seminary, no matter how many seminars I went on, no matter how many priests I spoke to, nobody can explain exactly what it is we do until you do it. And then I could go blue in the face telling you what I do, but you don't know what it is until you do it, right?
Right.
So young man, high school, we were talking about weightlifting, and then the conversation went right. It was like weird, but it went right in from weightlifting, went right into, hey, I'm going to be a priest one day. Yeah, and I was like, yeah. And so what are your conversations like with him about that?
So that's interesting too, and good memory. So when it comes to, someone's personal calling for the priesthood, everyone has a different experience, a different reason. And so I'm always on the receptive end to it. Like I won't, because even before I met him, he said the same thing to me when I first started working there. So he already had it in his heart that he was going to do that. So I'm always on the sounding board end, because I don't want to, I feel like everyone should cultivate their own ministry, have their own unique spin on their road to serving the church. And so I'm always on the receptive end when he asks me, either, oh, how do you do that? It could be something small like in the service. How do you, I don't know, how do you chant this verse? How do you, small things like that. I'm always willing to provide him with, my own personal style of doing things, but I keep it receptive. I never, I feel like, especially because I'm not ordained yet, I'm not in that mentor phase where someone like a Father Stephen is. So I keep it very receptive. If he wants to talk about weightlifting, some Sundays we'll only talk about weightlifting. If he wants to talk about, football, maybe that Sunday we just talk about football. If he wants to talk about Hellenic College Holy Cross, then we'll talk about Hellenic College Holy Cross. I keep it very, I feel like you have to kind of see where not just him, but all like youth are, and kind of connect with them there instead of like, it's interesting too, because, yeah, sometimes, as kids, future plans change, right? Like maybe I want to major in business, maybe I want to major in bio, who knows? And so I'm always on the, I'm always checking in for an update from them first, and then we just kind of go from there. So yeah, if that makes sense too, I'm always just keep it very, very chill and casual. And I don't mentor or anything like that yet. Maybe when I'm older, I'll change, but yeah.
No, you certainly will. And I appreciate you that you know your role. I mean, that's huge. Yeah. A lot of us don't know our roles, and we think that, everybody that has the internet thinks they're an expert in something, right? Because you get the answers right there. So it's really cool. Noel, I got so into the conversation, I forgot to ask you if there are any questions on our social media or on chat for anybody who's out there.
No questions so far.
No questions so far. All right, here we go. We'll continue on. So, Christo, I love it. I love your energy. I love your passion. I love your desire to serve the church. What are some of the issues you're finding our kids are dealing with these days? I know that one of the things we've talked about a lot is mental health, but what are you seeing? What are you seeing our kids dealing with these days?
It's the main thing is not lonely, well, maybe loneliness, but just, the kids are in a very like developmental phase of life when they're learning how to interact with other kids. And then COVID kind of undercut all of that. And then it's tough because different families have varying levels of comfort with COVID. So right now, like I think it's getting better as schools open up again. For people who are viewing from other parts of the state or country, like San Francisco has been very controlled. So a lot of restrictions that may have gone away a long time are either still in effect or have only gone away recently. So the kids were, just starved for interaction with their friends. And I know this from the parents, the kids might not even be aware of it themselves, but the parents would tell me, like, I've noticed that so-and-so is just a little like down in the dumps, shall we say, because they're missing their friends. They're missing these things they used to do without a second thought. And now they have to jump through so many hoops, which is okay because kids are resilient, I will say. Like the whole, like they probably aren't too bothered by a lot of the changes because they can deal with things on the fly. But it was probably like a lack of socializing, I would say, is something I've noticed a lot of kids are dealing with. Yeah, it's tough. Like, we all have our reservations when you're in a large group of people, and school kind of like is a pressure cooker where there's like, at least my high school, there were thousands of kids on campus at any given time. Like you could barely even walk to classes. So whereas that was probably like, maybe it's over stimulation. You have like now the opposite effect where kids are like under socialized. So that's probably what the things I've noticed kids are dealing with.
Yeah, this Generation Z is what they're calling them, is a really kind of, that's a good word to say, under socialized. They don't, face-to-face interaction is really difficult for them. And then now when we tell them we don't want you face-to-face, it's going to become even more difficult for them, right? Because they're learning that they don't do that. It's interesting that I'm finding that loneliness is a huge issue that they're dealing with a lot of that. What are, if you don't mind, and you don't have to answer this question, want to, but what is something that you dealt with where the church came in and helped you out, like where you feel like, God, the church was really there for me in your life? When have you felt that?
That is, it's hard to pinpoint a moment, but this is a conversation I actually have pretty often with a couple friends of mine, where we realize, like, looking back at our lives, it's hard in the moment to think of these things, but looking back in our lives, like, all of the best things in our lives have come from the church. So it's hard to think of like one moment, but it's like, Iron Village, probably some of the best friends. It's interesting. Like, I have a lot of lifelong friends from school, but the friends I made like 6 years ago, I'm just as close to, because you can connect with, other Orthodox people in different ways that you can't quite connect with your friends from school. And so all the best things in my life really have come from the church, whether it be friendships, experiences. It's kind of mind blowing when I look back. Like, so I love Greece, right? Greece is awesome. I love Greece. I'm into the culture and all that. But if it wasn't for going to the seminary, I couldn't speak Greek about 5 years ago, could not speak a lick of Greek. My dad speaks Greek. I knew a few words, but the seminary, had these submersive language courses on the island of Paros. And so, like, even though, I was connecting to the church for different reasons, it happened to fulfill this separate thing that I'd always, wanted to accomplish or learn more about. And that came through the church, which is just kind of, and that's just like one example. But like, yeah, looking back, it's just funny. I've always wanted to be a nuno, right? And it's tricky, you never know if you're going to get asked by the friend or the family member you think. But one of my best friends is a guy I knew from the seminary, and I baptized his kid. Now I'm a nuno, and so just all the things. Yeah, just looking back at my life, and I know a lot of my friends' lives from the seminary, or not the seminary. Just very involved people, like my nuno, who's he's an archon, and he's involved on the layperson side of things. Like, all the best things in my life seem to have come from the church. And so I can't think of one thing specifically, but I hope that answers that.
No, it totally answers the question. And what's interesting is that I feel the same way. Like my best friends are guys that I grew up going to Sunday school with, going to basketball with, going to the altar with, right? And those are the guys that I'd love to have a reunion with. Not necessarily. I mean, I have a couple of high school friends who listen to this. I know that they do, but
Sure.
Not that I don't want to see them, but like there's deep bonds and deep ties to, with people in the church. And that's what I'm afraid our kids are missing out on, to be quite honest. That's what I'm afraid that our kids are missing, that element of connection with. And that's why I think that youth ministry and the programs that we offer are, and I'm going to have to do some repenting for using the word gimmick, because there's got to be a better word than that. But we need to utilize these things in a way that brings our kids to a closer relationship with Christ, right? Like, everything we do in our lives should be Christ-centered and Christ-focused. Everything, no matter whether you're studying at the seminary, whether you're a priest, whether you're a seminarian, whether you're a kid of a priest or daughter of a priest, everything as Orthodox Christians should be centered around Christ, right? And if it's centered around Christ, how can we not be in the church on Sunday morning? Right. So with that, like, having conversations with other priests and stuff, and they share their frustrations. They say, I get frustrated because these people never come to church, but as soon as they get sick, they want me to be in the hospital. I was like, well, that's exactly what, that's exactly why you go. Like they want, at some point, we're all going to need the church, right? So even if they're not coming and they get sick and they call you to go, you got to go, because it's like, that's what the church does. Like, we don't just, it's not like who's part of Sam's Club and who's not, who's gospel and who's not. It's like, that's what we do. We go for that, right? And it's awesome. And you mentioned Ionian Village, summer camps, St. Nicholas, Summer Ranch, St. Sophia Camp, all the camps across the country, Camp St. Paul in New York. These are all programs that do that build and foster relationships to bring people closer to the church. We had Panos Koufos on a few weeks ago. You're smiling. That means you know Panos Koufos.
I do. He was a freshman at the seminary when I was a senior, I think, or was he anyway? Yeah, we overlapped for like a year or two. Yeah, he's a great guy.
It's funny that you say that. So then you were probably at school with Matthew Juthas, right?
Yeah, we were the same class. We're classmates.
Okay, so Matthew's the pastoral assistant here in Northridge. Yeah. And I grabbed a book off the shelf in Northridge the other day, and I opened it, and it said to Matthew from Panos, and I was like, wow, everything's like interconnected, right? So I asked Panos a question. I had the opportunity to go to the seminary married. Like that was a benefit to me that I thought was like worth $1 million, right? Like Christy and I met, we were young, we got married, we were young, and I had my time in Hollywood before we got married. And it was just before we got married where I looked at her and I said, hey, I need you to know that one day I might want to go back to the seminary because I have this feeling inside and this. And what she said to me was golden. And she's like, let's go. It'll be an adventure. You study. She goes, you don't need to be a priest. Just study. Yeah. Whatever happens afterwards happens. You know, life goes on. She goes, but what we can't do is start a life here in California, Southern California, and then pick everything up and try to move to Boston, right? So the two of us going is better. I was really comfortable like getting there, and I didn't have to worry about meeting anybody, doing, you know what I mean, like dating or anything like that. And, you know, I've got a beautiful wife and does beautiful things for us. Is that a concern for you? Like, is that something that you see your other classmates concerned with as well? Because, you know, being celibate is a huge commitment and I find that to be a calling as well, right? Yeah. But how did you find your classmates dealing with it? How did you find other people dealing with it? How is it that, I think it's a blessing in our tradition, in our Greek Orthodox Church, that clergy can get married as long as, you know, everything happens. But tell me your thoughts on that as a young person. Like my mom, and one more just to round out the question, the night before my ordination to the diaconate, my mom, you know, said to me, if you had to be celibate, would you still be doing this? And I looked at her and I said, I never had to think about that. Like it was never ever a thought to me, right? Yeah. Because I knew I always wanted a family, and I knew that I could be a priest and have a family. And so that was never a thought to me. So how is it as a young person, you know, with that kind of looming there?
Right. It's an interesting, it's another interesting, you know, layer to the path, right? Like the path towards priesthood is pretty not complicated, but there are a lot of things that you must kind of check off on your way there, and that is a big one, right? Like being married before you can be ordained, and so I also never had like the question in my mind, like, okay, I knew I was going as a single guy, but like, you know, I knew I'd never move on to ordination without like the right without the right girl coming along and you know, being married first, because everyone's different. But again, like to me, like marriage and ordination were like equal. And so because they're both like, you know, anyway, they were always equal to me. So it made it, the most difficult thing about it was that the dormitory building at the seminary and married student housing are quite different. As I'm sure you obviously were in married student housing with the apartments. So the biggest challenge was probably Polomonaco's dorms, but you know, and it's just dorm living is the same anywhere, but doing it when you're a little older in life is even more, you know, interesting. So yeah, and luckily, and it all comes from like your immediate circle, right? I've never felt the pressure to be ordained soon, or to, you know, marry someone who's not the right person soon, but that is a result of like the good support group I have in my family with, you know, they have the right vision for me. But it is different for everyone, because even like telling my family I wanted to go to the seminary was a very positive experience, very supportive. And for a lot of guys, it's the opposite. You know, my dad included. His papu was a priest, but so his mother was the daughter of a priest in Greece. And so when he told his mother, this same daughter of the priest in Greece, that he was going to be a priest, it was not a positive reception. It was disappointment. It was doubt. It was you know, suggesting he do other things. But you know, fortunately, because of my support group. I've never had to deal with, undue pressures. So
Good.
yeah.
Good.
So I've been lucky
awesome.
that way.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. The second half hour flew by as well, Noel, and I didn't ask you. I don't know if there are any more questions here. Open the conversation, but it's been a fun conversation with Christo here.
No questions that I'm seeing. If anyone wants to post their questions now, feel free, or raise your hand if you're here with us on Zoom. But
no, that's really good. But yeah, you mentioned polymonacos and married student housing. Two things. The first thing is, Christy and I, when we moved to the seminary, our first apartment was that one apartment on the ground floor behind the RA booth.
Oh, no way! You lived in the apartment.
We lived there for like 6 weeks, and I could not wait to get out of polymonacos. Like, I got to get out of here, right? And then fast forward now a couple of years, Metropolitan Gerasimos was then dean of students as the archdeacon, and I was the first married student RA. So they made he asked me to go down once a week and do RA duty, right?
No way.
So I would go down once a week and do RA duty, and I was like, man, I got to get out of here. Like, I don't know how you guys lived in there. God bless you guys. It's brotherly love in there, and you could be, but I was not made to be a single guy at the seminary. So,
yeah, man.
Takes a special person. Got Father Shantini Rusaki's on here right now, and he knows my story a little bit deeper than that. There was one time I used his phone for like 5 hours. I think I still owe him money for that long distance calls that I made. But anyways,
that's funny.
Christo, I want to ask you. We only got a few minutes left, but I want to ask you if you could give a message to people about coming back to church, what would that message be right now? Like, I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but like, if you had to make a public service announcement and it was going to be broadcast on TV, what are some of the key points you would make to tell people you got to come back to church? You have some great lines in here that I'm going to use. I'm telling you, and I'll tell you, you can use them again in the answer, but we need your kids. There's a role for you at the church. It's what we do. And the one that is just Christo is all the best things in my life came from the church.
Yeah.
Like, right. So tell me, like, you got 30-second public service announcement to tell people to come to church. Tell me what you're telling them.
My quick pitch would be that would be to come back to your church, because your church definitely needs you now. Like, now, the church always needs its people and its parishioners, but probably now more than ever. And the flip side of that is that you probably need your church, whether you realize it or not. And not to get cliche, but if we've stopped working out for a while, and the gym just like falls off of our radar, nothing feels better than leaving the gym after that first day back. It's just, you realize only once you kind of go back to what you have stepped away from, do you realize what you've been missing, kind of. And so I think only by coming to church, it's little things like even lighting that candle when you walk through the doors, just the peace of mind you feel sitting in a sacred space dedicated to God, right? Because we have the streams, but when we physically put ourselves in a place that we know is consecrated and dedicated to God himself, that's really when that all those good things can happen, right? Like the reset, the disconnect from the craziness of the regular week. Once you, and I've heard it from the people that have been coming back, it's been a while, and they'll come back from one Sunday and they'll say, geez, I didn't even know I didn't even realize how much I'd missed it since I came back. So it would just be to come back to your church on Sundays, because your church needs you, and you definitely need your church, whether you might be aware of it or not.
Love that, Christo. I love that very much. Noel, I'm gonna let the show end on that note, because I think it's a beautiful one. I'm gonna let you do your announcements and wrap us up, and then I'll close us with a prayer, because I just realized we didn't start with a prayer. I jumped right into it.
Oh.
So forgive me for that, but go ahead, Noel. It's all yours.
Sure. I'll just let everyone know that you can find all of our upcoming programs on our website and on our community calendar at myocn.net. Tomorrow we have our last Living Icon program of the year at 7 p.m. We also have our new programs from Ascension Cathedral in Oakland. We have 2 Bible studies and a program on the Divine Liturgy. You can find all of that information and the times on our website. I won't go through it all now. And then Thursday on Let's Talk Live, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have Dr. Al Rossi back again, talking about becoming a healing presence. And we also have the master chanter from my own cathedral, St. Sophia in Washington, D.C. We have George Theodorides will be talking to us about music in the church. So all of that you can find on our website, and as well as the upcoming programs. There will be some changes to the schedule for the week between Christmas and New Year's, and some next week. So just make sure that you check out our calendar to find out when the programs are happening.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you, Noel. Christo, thank you for being a guest. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. When we do an IV reunion show, when we start doing staff selection, I'm going to have you come on and be part of that. We'd love to have you talk about your IV experience and get some kids excited about being there as well. So thank you. Let us pray to the Lord. Lord, have mercy.
Awesome. Happy to do it.
Yeah. Lord, our God, we thank you for the opportunity to gather and to share our thoughts about the church and about service to you. We ask, Lord, that you open our hearts and our minds, instill us with your Holy Spirit, inspire us to do the things that are pleasing to you, for you are holy now and forever into the ages of ages. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. That was great. Christo, I appreciate it. Father Sotiri and Mariella, I see you there. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Mariella was a Goyen when I was at the Ascension Cathedral in Oakland.
Oh, cool.
She's there as well. And she's now, I think she's the supervisor of Sunday school in Oakland.
Nice.
She's over there. So it's nice to have her. Mariella, my love to everybody up there. You guys be well. We'll talk to you soon. Okay. Thanks, Noel. Thanks, Christo.